Um, Today is Thursday. We're into Galatians chapter 2. So again, I would encourage you to hit pause and read this if you haven't. There's really two pretty distinct sections in this chapter. Verses 1 through 10 talks about Paul's meeting in Jerusalem, which really refers back to Acts chapter 15. And then 11 through the end of the chapter is a confrontation with Cephas, who is Peter. So thinking back to, looking back at Acts chapter 15, they had a meeting in Jerusalem to talk about what expectation would be on these Gentiles that were accepting Christ and becoming Christians. And they determined that circumcision was not an expectation, but the expectation was, as I look back, that they should abstain from anything that's been sacrificed to idols. They should abstain from blood, and they should abstain from sexual immorality. And that was it. And we see this tendency throughout this letter to the Gentiles of people wanting to add stuff to salvation. And the Jews wanted to add the Jewish stuff, the Jewish faith. So they wanted to add circumcision. And Paul is stressing here that is not, that we are not saved through circumcision, that was not necessary. And then we move to, it appears to be a confrontation between Peter and Paul. In verse 11, it says in verse 12 that Peter was eating with the Gentiles. And in Bible times, if you ate with somebody, it meant you accepted them. So Peter was openly accepting the Gentiles. And then the Jews came, and Peter separated himself from the Gentiles and seemed to be afraid to be seen with them. And it goes on and just kind of gets after, in verse 14, really says to Peter, if you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you force the Gentiles to live like the Jews? So it's really calling Peter out, a pretty confrontational statement, really saying, hey, Peter, you were okay with being with the Gentiles before, and now the Jews come and you go back, and just really kind of getting after him for his hypocrisy. And then we see in verses 15 and following, really in 16, that Paul's main purpose for the letter, and in fact it's the purpose of all of his letters, that we know that a person is not justified by works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ. So the whole concept of being justified by faith, many think Galatians is Paul's first letter that he wrote. So the first use of this term justified by faith, which was the major rallying cry of the Reformation. And we need to remember justified is just a word that means we were made right with God through our faith in Jesus, and that is it. It's not faith plus circumcision. It's not faith plus obeying the law. It is strictly through faith alone. And then the famous verse in verse 20, I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. So Paul is discussing his radical transformation, that his old self is gone, and he now is a new creation in Christ, who is dwelling within him. And concludes this chapter saying, if righteousness were through the law, then Christ died for no purpose. So again, stressing that the law is how we were made righteous, how the Jews were made righteous through obedience to the law, which they couldn't do. And now we are made righteous strictly through faith in Jesus. It was why Christ came and why Christ died. So a good reminder for us as our tendency, like I mentioned yesterday, our tendency is to add stuff to requirements of salvation. Yes, it's faith in Jesus, but you must be baptized, but you must attend church, but you must be confirmed, but you must, and the list goes on and on. So we just need to remember we are justified and made right with God strictly through faith in Jesus. So have a great day, and we'll see you on here tomorrow as we look at Galatians chapter 3. God bless.